Welcome to the IMM Friday Flash Talk, anchored by Govin Whittles.
The reason why that responsibility was taken away from the Hawks is not yet known.
With marketing enthusiast Tarasai Moffat.
To have a return on sales, you need to have posts that are going to be engaging.
The IMM Institute's Friday Flash Talk. Welcome to another installment of the IMM Institute's Friday Flash Talk with myself, Govin Whittles. On this platform, we talk about the latest trends in marketing, as well as the latest strategies that are being employed by some of the leading minds in marketing and some of the leading campaigns that are running right now. We hope to educate, give insights that you could use in your next strategy meeting, in the boardroom, and to keep you on the cutting edge of what's happening in the world of marketing. It's my pleasure to welcome back to the IMM Friday Flash Talk, Brad Watridge. He's a senior partner at Hot Mustard, a marketing creative, and my favorite graduate from the University of Imagination. Brad, it's really great to have you back as usual. It's great to welcome Tarasai Moffat, MD of Gateway Synergy, our resident marketing guru, the one with all the insights. She asks the best questions and I help shepherd the conversation. Today, we'll be talking about something very, very interesting. Why do informal businesses set up side by side in Africa? Brad has got a background in strategy and he's perfectly placed to give us an answer to that important question. It's something we've all seen happening, but have we ever asked why? Brad, today, you're the one that's answering that question and it's over to you.
Geez, I hope I'm not going to answer this alone because it's such a hectic topic. And I know Tarasai is sitting on some really golden, like a few golden nuggets. So I'm sure it'll be a group effort. But yeah, I mean, absolutely. Thanks for having me. Great topic. Awesome topic. It speaks to my passion of working in the rural spaces, working with SMMEs. Cannot wait to dive into this. Awesome.
Thank you so much. I should mention that we also have some insights from the Strategic Marketing for Africa magazine, which I do encourage all of our viewers to subscribe to. There's a very interesting article in that magazine, this month's issue, which is focusing on why mechanic businesses in Kenya set up side by side, and something called the informal welfare economy, which is what is created when they set up side by side like that. Tarasai, when you think about businesses setting up side by side, do you think about a marketing headache or a conundrum which necessarily isn't understood?
It's a conundrum that's not understood, I think, from a marketer's perspective in terms of how do you penetrate. But it is being done and it is achievable. I mean, you look at just a typical example when ladies go and get their hair braided in Pretoria CBD, for example. Every next stop will be a braid salon, hair salon. Everyone is selling some form of hairpiece or, but the cost comes down, which makes it affordable for everyone to be able to do that. So it saves on cost because there's the sharedness of resources. They're using the same toilets, they're sharing the same taxi rank, they're sharing the same building and electricity. So because of that, it makes it more affordable for them to bring the price down and have more walk in terms of traffic. Obviously, then it means that it becomes a cash business, which is something that obviously as the economy, we struggle to say, how can we get this cash into the system?
Brad, when you think about these businesses operating side by side, they're identical. What kind of situation does that create for marketing?
I think it's very difficult to put a kind of a one answer on that, because informal trading is everything from Singapore selling oranges on the side of the road, right to, you know, the braid ladies in central Pretoria that have got a couple of shops. They're still considered informal, I would imagine. Hey, Terasai. So, you know, I think as a marketer, look, it's our passion. I think Terasai and I love this. So we're ready to get in there and look for opportunity. But it's kind of going back a little bit in time. I feel like, you know, my recent visit to the villages around Komatipoort, I found like sign writing, traditional marketing methods used so powerfully in those spaces. So as a marketer, there's always opportunity to help these guys stand out. But again, it depends who we're talking to and which informal market, whether it's urban or rural.
That's interesting. In Komatipoort, what kind of marketing strategies did you observe? I would imagine it's just the old school word of mouth plus outdoor marketing.
You know, it's fascinating. You know, we tend to, it's so strange how we think sometimes. We tend to kind of put down the approach informal traders have to the market. But these guys are so smart and they're right on the pulse. They know exactly who their customers are. They know exactly what imagery they need to use. We might drive past and go, geez, that sign writing's, you know, a little bit touch and go. But they know that it talks to their market and they use the resources they have available. So yeah, definitely outdoors plays a huge, huge role. Also, where they actually situate themselves becomes a marketing tool. Because remember, informal traders generally sell to a specific market. And this market does rely on public transport a lot. So it's all about positioning a location that actually becomes part of their marketing. And they use their structures so amazingly well. Every inch of that building is sign-righted in some form or the other. And of course, you then have the announcers that are out there bringing the customers in. And, you know, the louder you talk, the louder the music, the bigger the interest. So it's a dynamic environment.
Teresa, what kind of opportunity do you see in that environment?
So before we get into the opportunities, we need to just understand the structure, which comes also from that strategic marketing magazine, and also aligning it to our South African economy here as well. So, for example, understanding their business model, they have trust amongst themselves. You know, you can't steal someone's client within that environment, which means there's that safe security that they have. You know, the article also goes into the fact that they lend each other money. So there is a sort of investment and a cycle of, you are this month low in sales, I'm going to help you out. And then there's a shared community in the sense like, if someone passes away, then they all contribute to help each other out. So, you know, you need to look at it from the sense that as businesses or as people, they have a system and a workflow, which is what Brad is highlighting too, that works for them and works and services it. And looking at it from an outside point of view and saying, oh, this looks a little clustered, without understanding the intricacies of the actual business that they're into and the strategy that they have, which is working for them. And I think we also understand the capital cost. It's not easy to raise money to start a business anywhere else. You know, you've got tax, you've got VAT, et cetera, et cetera. Those businesses are situated together because of low cost as well. It's easier to start that up because you can start it with your hands. You can start it with an assistant. You can start it with, you know, low income. Even in the retail sector, you'll see it with the China malls. They all will be grouped together, all selling the same party packs, the same balloons, the same cell phone shops, all grouped together because it's cheaper to start that as a business model than to try set up a huge manufacturing plant, for example.
Yeah, good points.
I hear you. But we like to think of it as a competition, right? Does this kind of scenario take the competition out of it, or how does it work, right?
I think Yeah, listen, so from my experience, being in that space is if it's 10 to 1, you have some sort of relationship with the people next to you. So Teresa spoke about, the shops, the China malls, for example, opening up next to each other, similar, and being a collective. You generally have a relationship with the person that is selling next to you. I found that very prevalent in the rural markets. So if you go into the rural markets, into the villages, and you go to the town centers and central areas, you'll find they're probably either family members or they know each other, and it's that whole community, help scenario that is created there. But when you come into the urban areas, it's a little bit different. In terms of competition, so the idea is, clustering is not just a rural thing. We see it in our malls where we have all the, restaurants together. It's about convenience and being closer to your customer. And a lot of those that you might not know that come in and become your competitors have sussed out and seen that you've captured the market, and then they kind of jump on the bandwagon. And because of entry into the market being quite low financially, it makes it incredibly easy for someone to come in, set up their little informal store, foil their product on there, and become your competition. They don't view competition as a threat, so to speak, because it is really regulated in a very informal way. You kind of know who's on your block and who's not meant to be on your block. And it's a community effort that keeps that regular and keeps that sellable so that you don't reach a point where your market is saturated. That's what I've experienced.
What I found interesting about the article is how they mentioned that if you have someone coming in there that that firstly is able to provide a service that's on the same standard as yours or level of quality, then it only enhances the reputation of the entire block, which is clustered together as a safe trading space. But at the same time, while people are helping each other out there, they're not going to help each other make profit every month. It's more of making sure that you don't go under. And they're all looking for a competitive edge. And what I was wondering is that often we think of chief marketing officers as people who are really coming up with these insane strategies. But in that environment, I imagine it is that person making the sign or on the loud hailer who is carrying the weight of the number of people coming into the shop on his shoulders and carrying the reputation of the brand. Teresa?
Yeah, that is indeed true. That is definitely true. And especially if it is a building, because then obviously the landlord is that person as well. Or if it's the hawkers on the street, then they are that person as well. So to Brad's point, it depends with which, when we say informal, who are we referring to specifically? But at the same time, there has been penetration, and we can't, from a CMO's point of view, not say there hasn't been. Most of them either are using ShopRite as a place or a platform to send their money or to save their money. That's why the banks do the CTRs every single day and make sure how is the cashing threshold, how much money is going through there, because they have cash and they want to send it to the rural areas or to the town or whoever, to their auntie, uncle, or to their supplier. They are going to go through ShopRite and use that. And that's created that form of platform. Capitec has also managed to penetrate that market. Why? Because low banking fees or no banking fees. They don't have to pay monthly fees. And, those type of banks have managed to penetrate, or even the cell phone industry, from your mobile money and being able to send e-wallets or Momo Cash, etc., without those type of fees. So the banking sector has really managed to be able, from a marketing point of view, to penetrate. And how they normally go about it is through word of mouth or through activations, as Brad mentioned, very loud activations. You will see trucks and branding and, signage and everything, and handing out flyers with promoters explaining the benefits or the low fees. And then as communities, they also decide amongst themselves, this is the cheapest bank, because some of our customers are coming in and they want to be able to e-wallet us the money. So how can we go about that? So there has been that form of penetration. And I think as marketers, there is more that can be done to try to use some form of technology, but with understanding the market to be able to say, how can we also get into that space? Because I think that will probably be most marketers' questions. How can we get our products into that space?
Yeah, it's a good question.
It's interesting that the banks are capitalizing on the B2B opportunity. What about the suppliers of the goods that are being used in, say, the block of what's called the informal welfare business system that they have? For example, at our taxi rank in King Williamstown, right, there are a lot of motor spares shops side by side. And I know for a fact that they're all buying their parts from maybe a handful of 2 to 3 suppliers. So if you're running a B2B agency, are you looking for blocks like those and making sure that you kind of capture them so that all your parts are going through them?
Yeah, you've got to speak their language. And I think this is kind of where we get it a bit wrong, maybe us as marketers, is we don't understand the informal market really well. And also to note that the informal market in, let's say, Kenya and our informal market is actually really different. And not just that, each province, almost each village, or each small town you go to, it has a different dynamic. So it makes it very difficult for us as B2B. If we've got a company that produces spares and they want to penetrate that market, it's always good to go to ground. And yes, we do look for those clusters, but we also look for opportunities of, main transport networks. So what I've picked up as well is, which is maybe a little bit on the sad side, is that a lot of the key clusters that are really making good cash money are foreign owned. And it's getting kind of greater and greater and greater. So you can market until you're blue in your face to that market, but that audience will not pay attention to you because they're operating in a conglomerate. So there's one guy out there that's saying, this is what your signage needs to look like. This is because they've obviously cookie cutter this throughout South Africa and Africa. So I think we've got to factor that in as well. As marketers, sometimes we just cannot penetrate those markets because we are not allowed access. But there's a lot we can do on the peripheral. And this is where outdoor plays a really important role. And your brand messaging plays a role. And that tech that Terasai spoke about is out there. These guys do have mobile phones. It's one thing I picked up on my recent trip, how many people have access to smartphones and they were using them quite aggressively. So that's where you're, really being strategic and being really focused on your marketing strategy plays a massive role in your success levels.
If they're operating as a conglomerate, how is that changing marketing?
I knew you would pick up on that one, but it makes it a bit tough. Look, their role is to come in and, shift product. If you just think about that informal space and a foreign person coming into the country, they just want to shift product. They find hubs and nodes where they can get into and they dominate. They're quite aggressive. They're very territorial. And that kind of affects our informal market because our informal market, unlike, for example, the Kenyan, car repair guys, is not always organized. It's not always at that level. So they take advantage of that. So it does affect us as marketers, but there are always guerrilla campaigns that you can run that can hit your target audience when they're kind of least expected and they are open to that conversion. So from a B2B perspective, we have a lot of localized influencers. Community influencers are becoming massive commodities right now. They're the ones that spread the word for you. We're using a lot of them in our campaigns, from a youngster sitting in a small town in Kathu or just outside Kathu, Northern Cape, to a guy in Western Cape, Cape Town, who's a community influencer. Those play vital roles.
So many interesting points. I'd like to pick up on community influencers again, but what do you think of what Brad is saying, Terasai, regarding the this whole concept that it's harder to penetrate because of how organized essentially the decisions are becoming?
It's extremely true. You look at, I'll use a local example like Marabastad, just down the road. you know, traditionally that is not a South African dominated place, but at the same time, it's the goods are being sold there and money is being made there, and it's very protected, extremely protected.
Does that create price uniformity, Terasai, or do price wars start there? Because if they're all running at the same kind of level or all coming out of the same compartment, how do you compete? Or doesn't it even matter?
Well, I suppose, like Brad said, there's an element of, I wouldn't want to use the word dumping, but to some extent you're literally just, as long as the product is out. And I think there's a carte blanche article. Sorry, I don't have a lot to mention that.
We had to bring it in. We had to. High five. High five.
That's okay. I'm glad to know that you guys are watching. So please do tell me what you saw on Carte Blanche. It's a great show. It's Sundays, 7 p.m.
Yes, about how, the fashion and the retail comes through. It goes through to the Durban port. From the Durban port, it goes to surrounding borders like Botswana, Zimbabwe, etc. And then it's driven in here, without going through the customs and the duties, etc. And all of that happens significantly to make sure that obviously the price is low. So it keeps the cost of the goods down. And so, yes, price pegging will happen, but at the same time, it's also funding a very larger scale monopoly at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And an underground marketing network, which is basically all on mobile. And it's kind of what we've noticed is that it's shifted the perceptions of people of what they can trust. So a lot of this Friday Flash Talk has been about trustworthiness, right? And the loyalty to your brand, because it's a good brand, it's a real brand, the goods are authentic. But the saturation of counterfeit goods in the market across all areas is degrading the value of authenticity, where people are okay with not having authentic products. And many times, Brad, those fake products are found in those kind of hubs, and they transform from being a safe place where you can get your car fixed to a safe place where you can get your car fixed with a possibly counterfeit brand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a huge issue. We had a client a couple of years ago that used to do food authentication, and he was explaining to us how even fake food is so prevalent. And I mean, you just wonder to yourself, like, how does that even work? But I think the negativity aside, and knowing that we are up against this kind of foreign market penetration, I still think that there's something beautiful about driving past this Winkel shop that has been beautifully signwrited, and that effort has been put in to create awareness around that brand. And you can see the owner has signwrited themselves, and they've even tried to copy some of their brands that they represent there in the way that they've drawn it. And I think there's just something so South African about that, and actually African about that. Traveling through Mozambique's rural areas, you'll see the old Coca-Cola signages from their campaigning back in the early 80s or late 80s. That was their campaign rollout, and that's how they got their product into those rural spaces. So I think there is still opportunity. I just think we need to approach it and be very aware of our customer and our landscape. And I think sometimes we don't do enough research. Remember how we spoke about how important research is before you access that market? And a lot's being done on assumption.
You mean on what the consumer will want, or what kind of products will move?
I think it's on what you believe the consumer wants. And then sometimes it's two different things. What we believe sitting in Johannesburg in an agency environment, and our clients' head offices in Johannesburg, and we're trying to penetrate it, for example, a rural market, even King Williamstown or wherever. We need to be on the ground to understand thinking. We need to understand the DNA. And that's why research is really important for us. If you research this topic, you'll see there's not a lot of content out there. And even if you go further and you try and figure out that where does the informal market fit in the unemployment rate, even that's gray area. So the informal market, for me, is a massive market. You can see it everywhere, and it has a lot of cash in it, and it could really help our economy if we can try and formalize it. If it's formalized in some sort of way, that'll help us as marketers to be able to use other marketing tools that we have at our disposal to get into those markets.
You think they've been left to market themselves?
Yeah, and I think they're doing it fairly okay. But as a person that's part of an agency, I'd love to have clients that would benefit from that. But yeah, I think they're left to market. But it's very odd. For example, I'm going to, if you don't mind, go back to Komatipoort because I've just been there. And when you drive through the town, 3 or 4 shops are owned by the same foreign nationality. And when you chat to them, if they're willing to chat to you, luckily this chap, he was willing to chat. He said, our sales doesn't start at the store. It starts in Mozambique. So the transportation that these informal guys are taking to come and buy from us and sell in Mozambique, or for the customer to come buy from us and they buy, when I tell you there's money there, he says we start our marketing and our sales from the origin. And I think that for me was very interesting. That doesn't just happen in place of business.
You mean people are coming across the border to buy? Yeah,
they come across the border when I say busloads. They come in busloads, and it's an amazing experience. There are, I'm very fond of Mozambicans. I love the country very much. Good people, but there's very, very, very little variety there. And what these foreign nationals do is bring product in, like Teresa said, at a very good price, and they're all about pricing. So if you go and stand at the ATM, which I had to do, you'll see them drawing out money to go and cash purchase. So it's a very informal market, like we've said, but from a marketing perspective, there are ways that we can capitalize on it. If you're a bank and you want to hit that market and you have a resource that can solve the problem that they're facing, not to have cash on hand, you can get into that market by positioning your marketing in a specific way. But don't think what works here in Johannesburg is necessarily going to work 30 kilometers away, because it's very different. And that's what we don't get about Africa, not just in our countries, but even in our provinces or our states. Things are very different. There is so many different cultures and habits and beautiful things happening that we don't take into consideration.
Teresa, do you get do you have a sense of how often agencies or marketers are being approached to tap into that sector? Do you know if people are even interested?
There is an interest, and they get approached for that. And I mean, you see the volume of case studies that go out on them, to say this campaign reached this amount of people. It had this many tweets, this many likes, this many reshares, it had a reach of X amount. And I think that's the growing trending word, reach. I don't know if reach equates to sales at this point with this industry, but definitely there is the efforts to do that. Campaigns that are localized, campaigns that use local language, Facebook platforms, because TikTok, there is a growing huge marketing drive to penetrate those markets.
And yet they seem so inaccessible to, say, B2B firms, or even the big traditional firms that are competing with these markets. Okay, like as a consumer, I would think
marketers are trying, even from a product design. I mean, you look at it and you say, okay, perhaps I need to make bigger volumes. So if I was selling, let's say, a washing powder, I'd make a huge pack, so that, because it then gets cut into smaller pieces so that it can be sold for 5 Rand, 10 Rand, versus someone who doesn't have enough money to buy it for, let's say, 200 Rand at that point in time. So there's product design that goes into that, or there's product design that says, okay, maybe we need to make our products a little smaller so that at least, you know, it's more affordable and you can buy it for 9 Rand versus buying a 2 liter for 20 Rand, you know. So there is that awareness and that research and trying to adapt to the market as well.
That's interesting because that's exactly what we found fuels the counterfeit sector that we went to check. We focused a lot on this platform on kind of marketing those, I'd say, top of the scale prices, right? So luxury goods almost. And we haven't really talked about goods sold in bulk. Are you seeing a drift towards goods sold in bulk by the big traditional brands to enter that market, Brad?
Oh, yes and no. I think you know the informal market, you know, where they get their product from, they're incredibly resourceful, and this is where that word of mouth becomes really important for them, because they will source the best quality product at the best price. And it would be something that I don't think they would plan beyond a week or two, because the informal market, especially the informal traders, the ones on the side of the roads, are really operating in a place of need. You know, they need to make a certain amount of money that day. So when you operate in a place of need, you know, it's very instant and your strategies are very quick. So I think, you know, what I picked up was Cashbuild, if we can mention brands, did very well in penetrating the village industries and markets. There's huge development happening in our villages. There's this whole kind of towns, mini towns that are popping up, and we have brands like, we know, KFC, etc., that are going into those markets and penetrating the informal space. But Cashbuild's setup of these stores that you would see here in a more urbanized area and what they are in a more rural area is a bit more different, and they do have more product on bulk. Because what I've picked up is transportation is a big issue. So the informal market is plagued by a lack of good transportation and transporting of goods. So that will also govern the decision-making that is made by the informal traders. Like, how can I get this product to my customer with the transportation challenges that I do have?
So if you're a marketing officer and say you have a handful of clients, but they're varied, right? Some of them are traditional brands that haven't tapped into the sector before, and they're looking at their own brand and seeing something like a cash and carry brand. How do you convince them that this is worth doing?
I think it's through research. I think you do a lot of research, and you know, you put the numbers on the table. Look, any company that you approach that from a B2B space, and I could be wrong in a B2C environment, but B2B, you know, they're all about, it's a very traditional market here in South Africa, and a market that doesn't like change. And B2B, you're dominated by two specific areas. It's traditional white market, and then you have the up-and-coming traditional black market or industrialists that are coming into the space. But both of them are pretty conservative. If you put the right numbers in front of them and you have the right motivation, they will consider it and take that leap of maybe creating a breakaway brand that speaks to the informal market. But the biggest issue that we face is pulling that off, because we have a lot of risks. Security is a big issue. You know, when it comes to branding in the B2B space, you have to be careful now. You can't have, for example, live tweeting going on with a CEO who's busy doing something, because you risk the CEO being taken. So if you go into an informal market and you say, we're doing a launch today, our CEO is attending this, they're part of the launch, you wouldn't do it live. You would do it post-event, because there's a safety risk. So the informal market does kind of come with a bit of challenges. But yeah, they're pretty open to it if the numbers. B2B is all about sales numbers. We deal with the sales guys. That's who we deal with. It's all about numbers.
Clarissa, what do you think? I mean, I hadn't even considered the safety issue around it. But it does seem like it's something worth experimenting on. And just a while ago, we were talking about experimental marketing budgets where there's no expectation of return.
Yeah.
Do you think this is as risky as that discussion, Teresa, or you think this is something more solid?
I think this could be something a little more solid. We've known about this for years. It's not new. It's not a surprise. It's been a part of our culture. It's been a part of our existence. We've grown up in these circumstances and situations. We know. So not that we know without research, but I'm just saying that it's not a surprise.
Something that struck me about this is like, you may want to tap into this area, right? And would this be something that you walk into the meeting with and you tell them, all right, we're going to try and go into this, and then everyone breathes a sigh of relief because they don't have to apply AI technology or launch a digital campaign or try to make sure that they find 50,000 people engaging online? They're like, all right, good old-fashioned signage and outdoor and some flyers.
Oh man, the expectation is always still there. Return on investment is important. And, you'll be quite surprised. There's a rule of thumb that if you're an established business, you spend a percentage of your turnover on marketing so that you do remain relevant and you actually can have a very strong lead gen campaign running or process running. But a lot of the B2B companies that we work with are not prepared to spend that. So there's always this expectation of massive returns with little budget. That's kind of where we play.
Mm.
So yeah, while you go and you say to someone, look, if you go into this rural market, this is your footprint. I mean, this is the customers that you can attract. Your product's very competitively priced. We believe this is the market for you. We wouldn't really be the ones initiating that. They would have probably wanted to go into that market, but wasn't sure how. And they would bring us in and say, like, how would we do this? So they would have probably done preliminary research around the numbers and the infrastructure and the safety, etc., and just needed that. How do we attract the market? How do we get the feet through the door?
If they haven't done the research, are there people that they can go to that you know of?
Yeah, look, we don't do research. We work with a lot of research companies. I mean, that's something I believe our industry. Look, I really do think that our industry is one of the best in the world. I don't know how Teresa feels about it, but we really are on the ball in terms of industry. There's a lot of great research companies out there actually doing good research. But I think when we come in, we just refine what we want from that research, what information we need. And what we're looking for is that golden nugget that's going to connect us to the customer in the most memorable way. So that when a competitor does pop up next to us, we've created some sort of brand relationship with that customer. We don't want to lose them to pricing. It's the last thing we want to do, because there will always be in that environment someone who will come in with a better price, especially if you're dealing with a traditional South African company who's producing goods locally. They're not really competitive generally. I'm saying, and now I'm generalizing, that generally they're not as competitive as, for example, a Chinese counterpart bringing product in. Mm-hmm. So, those are the things and factors that you look at.
And also on top of that, I think there's a model that insurance policies have always used, which is that they always have brokers, and those brokers belong to the community, and those brokers will go and sign up the people for funeral policies. So each of those funeral policies will always have a broker who knows the people, who knows the community, who sells them on, who signs them up, who comes with a referral page, and people know to go to that person for any queries. And they always make sure that in each province or in each area that they are targeting, there's always a local representative who they can trust or whom they have trained to use as this. So that would be almost like a similar model that marketers can use, in the sense that you have a local partner that you will use and is within that community and knows the people, and they become the face of your brand, so to speak, and they become your representative and your word of mouth. Trustable, you've trained them, you've upskilled them, made sure that they know what they're doing. And so it's a model that can still be used and replicated. And also on the data point, I mean, there's call centers that have a huge amount of data information from people calling in and raising complaints or complaining about this. And you can use all of that information to be able to get some form of outcomes about how are people feeling about are they happy with your product? Are they not happy with your product? What can you do to improve your product? Why are they calling in the first place? What are the issues? And if you can address those problems, then at least you're closer to the ground, because now there's a trusted element within that comes into play.
Yeah.
Is that a community influencer?
In terms of?
Is that what you would call a community influencer?
I'm not sure if they're an influencer. Well, the term influencer is changing so rapidly. 1 minute an influencer, someone who is, respected and trusted in the community, like a community leader or a pastor or a grandma. And then, from a social point, it's someone who's on TikTok and on social media. And, so the term influencer changes, but I think what you want is a trusted partner for your brand.
Is the term influencer triggering? Is it becoming triggering in marketing circles? Is it, Brad? It is, yeah? I think a lot of people have been burnt recently.
Yeah, look, I have a very personal, weird take on influencing and that. So putting that aside, I think a community influencer for campaigning is just, obviously Bob, who's got a lot of followers that can rep your brand. But I think if you are a B2B company and you're looking at establishing sites in a more informal market, I think you need a trusted partner. I think Teresa said it beautifully there, trusted partner. And it is a partnership, not an employment scenario, because, that is also very important. Localized employment is a very, very sensitive topic in an informal environment. You can't come in and bring your entire outside team to operate your business. You will not be very popular. There's this amazing sense of community in the informal markets that I think we could also tap into.
But then do you need, when you're trying to tap into this, what do they call the informal welfare system, which is really weird way of describing kind of these blocks of shopping areas, essentially. Do you kind of have to have an in-person there? Do you need an influencer there? Or you just run with the trusted partner where you've got a collaboration going? Or can you still use influencers in that scenario?
I don't know, Teresa, but from my side, that's why I say I think the article that Tim wrote was really nice, and the research done was really isolated to a Kenyan example. But I personally don't see that welfare system very active in the areas that I go into. It's kind of, eat or be eaten in the environment we've created. But also our banking industry is quite evolved. So, our banking industry, even for an informal market, there are ways of getting access to loans and cash, etc. But clumping together, I see it a lot with the foreign shop owners, the informal guys, more clumping together, supporting each other. But the more localized informal traders, etc., I don't see that prevalent in South Africa. But I could be wrong, Teresa. How do you feel?
I tend to agree with you on that one. And I think statistics are showing that, and also sentiment online is showing that. I mean, if you read the tweets, if you can use the radio interviews, you can pick up the sentiment and all the listening tools that we use to understand customer sentiment. And you can pick up that is the sentiment that people are feeling as well.
So there's the clumping together, but then the other interesting one that you mentioned was cross-border shopping, which I suppose is more prevalent in some of the towns that are closer to the land borders. But in Johannesburg as well, we did a piece a while ago about the number of buses arriving in the CBD just to shop for the weekend and then head straight back. So in that scenario, do you think you need a cross-border marketer? Because you said that these guys are marketing at the source, right? So if you're a B2B person and you know that they're marketing at the source. How do you approach that, Brad?
Well, the B2B market is, I'm going to take a leap here and say, very skeptical of economies outside of South Africa. And I think it's because it's very difficult to do business across border. First of all, it's very expensive to travel. So it's not unusual if for example, in Washington and you want to do business in Oklahoma, it's not difficult to logistically even to get there, even though they're worlds apart. Yeah, in Africa, it's incredibly expensive to travel. It's incredibly expensive to do business outside of our borders. So it's a decision where you wouldn't probably target informal markets outside the border because it just wouldn't pay enough. And you would rather, this is purely my thought, you would rather just go for an established market, but that would be a very big cost layout. But what's very interesting, we had it recently with a French company. They either, a lot of people saying the economies are shifting in Africa and Nigeria, Kenya, maybe in a few others are taking the limelight away from South Africa. But there's still a lot of companies that come through South Africa and then go into Southern Africa. And they often burn their fingers quite a bit because cross-border, again, is very unique. I mean, the Angolan market compared to the Mozambican market, they couldn't be more further apart. So it's very tricky in a B2B space to shift your business across border unless you have a good relationship, like Teresa said, a partner there that understands what is happening on the ground. So we work across border. We work with companies that have presence across border, and it's tough.
But if you represent a multinational, it's probably something you should be discussing with them. The fact that they're able to work across the border gives them a unique advantage, right?
Yeah, Gavin, I mean, from supplying Egypt with bricks, client of ours in Vatbank manufactures bricks, we told them, go to Egypt. Egypt is scouring the world for bricks. Strange, weird thing that we picked up. But, I always advocate that we should be doing more work across border, but Teresa as well knows it's so expensive to get there. Just to logistically, if you have a site across border, for example, if you've got a site in Botswana, you've got to pay 4,000, 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 rand to fly there just to go and see if something goes wrong. It takes you 40 minutes to fly, 30 minutes, but it takes you an entire day to get there. And so those are the hurdles that you face. We always have the discussion with them because we're very pro centralizing the economies, but we're a big continent.
Yeah, I think that's
African continental free trade area.
Yeah, I think that's really what people are pinning their hopes on, at least the politicians. You think that'll change anything, Teresa? This is actually exactly what it should change.
This is what it should change. It should make doing business in Africa more affordable. It should make the cost of trading amongst ourselves more affordable, and it should make transportation more affordable. And the vision has been set and the agreements have been signed and implementation phases are coming across. I mean, they have payment systems now where you can pay within your own currency to another country, which is excellent. The rail is being built up, transport is being built up, but obviously this vision is for 2063. And we have to be confident that it is for 2063. And because of that, and it's also factoring in all those things and the different scales of the economies of the different countries. Yeah. And, some of these countries really rely on that tax, duties, customs for the survival of their countries. So it's how do you bridge and mitigate some of those financial things. So that's a bigger discussion, but definitely, I mean, we do business in sub-Saharan Africa mostly, and it has managed to bear its fruit because of that. And because it's almost, in as much as it's different, it's a little more affordable than going all the way through to West Africa. But the multinationals are there. They do deliver, they do distribute, and they always do make sure that the agencies that they work with have an agency representative within those countries.
I think that's a nice positive note to end it on. What would be a skeptical discussion. But as we end it off, I'll start with you, Tarasai. So if you're a marketing officer, right, or a marketing mind, and you're looking at informal businesses that are set up side by side, right now, what are you thinking? What do you think they should keep top of mind when they look at that as a potential for clients and for investment?
Oh, that might open up another can of worms, but I'm just thinking based on what Brad said, it almost sounds like then you need to actually partner with the gatekeepers. So yes, you can try your out of home, your billboards, your activations, etc. But you might need to also have a foreign national marketing strategy so that you can also be able to target and communicate with the gatekeepers as part of your marketing strategy.
That's great.
Sounds like exactly what they need to hear. Brad, what do you think marketers should keep top of mind?
Know your customer. Sorry, but we just sometimes don't know our customers well enough. Know your customer. Go and grab a chow with somebody in that localized area. Sit, have a drink, get to know, spend time with your potential customer. Learn your customer. Love your customer.
Head out to Komatipoort. Spend a day there, you know?
Yeah. It's amazing
Yeah.
stuff happening there. I mean, good people. Good people.
First rule of journalism is get out there.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. You want to do anything properly, you got to be there to experience it firsthand.
Yeah.
And I think that's exactly what applies here. And you've shared some valuable insights from what you've learned out there, and also from a B2B perspective, which I think are things that a lot of people watching this can write down, develop strategies off of. And Tarasai, thank you again as well for your insights. I think that this is probably one of the conversations that was more realistic and is more immediately implementable by people who are representing clients. And I hope that's exactly what everyone watching will do. And we'd also like to remind you to please share this conversation on LinkedIn, on social media, and on WhatsApp, on your WhatsApp groups. Send this around, have a discussion about it. And hopefully it will lead to more insightful discussions, but more importantly, it could lead to clients to doing business because of the strategies that you've developed from listening to some of the points that were spoken about here. Brad Watridge, thank you again for your time. Brad Watridge, Senior Partner at Hot Mustard, and Tarasai Moffat, MD at Gateway Synergy, and for myself, Govan Whittles, the host of the Friday Flash Talk at the IMM Institute. It's been an absolute pleasure, and we'll see you guys next time.